Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today I want to be looking at my Invoked Dolls list. This is probably my favorite deck to play this format. It's incredibly fun. It's rather consistent. It has very good going second plus going first boards. And it involves some of my favorite archetypes as well, Invoked and Shaddolls. And as well, you know, Alistair the Invoker being such a cool card in general based off of a really neat person. These sleeves really serve no other purpose than just making the cards look pretty just because they're so big. And it's really hard to hold the deck, hence why I have it split in two based on just how large the sleeves are. On to my actual card list. For the monsters, I run 3 Alistair the Invoker. It's pretty standard. He's your best normal summon as well as being a really good consistency engine for the deck. Second best normal summoned monster are 3 Shaddoll Wendy. She special summons any Shaddoll monster from your main deck, as well as recycles a bunch of stuff. 3 Shaddoll Squamata, because this is the second best Shaddoll monster. All of the Shaddoll monsters have 2 effects. One when they're flip summoned, one when they're sent to the graveyard by a card effect. Squamata just dumps any Shaddoll card, and if it's flipped, it destroys a monster on the field. 2 Hedgehog searches monsters. 2 Beast, it draws cards, as well as cycles stuff out of your hand. 1 Shaddoll Ariel. She's there for the first turn combo with your trap card, and 1 Shaddoll Dragon to help deal with backward decks. The last supporting card I do run for the deck is 1 Trick Clown. I chose not to run the Perform Mage monsters simply because I'm running Pot of Desires in this deck. I honestly don't know if I want to continue running Pot of Desires. I'm still in the testing phase for that card, but it is a really good card, and there's nothing really bad that pertains to this lineup. It's just missing a few things that could make it better. Like, I don't have Triple Tactics talents, I don't have Forbidden Droplets at the moment, and those are cards I'm looking to add to this particular build, which definitely increase the ceiling of the deck. It's just whether a winner then rather than a never. For hand traps, 3 Nibiru, the Primal Being. This is the most powerful hand trap in the game currently. It's really integral to help play around Dragon Link. I'm super happy this card got an OTS Ultimate Rare Rarity bump, as well as Super Polymerization. So that just adds like 5 to 6 high rarity cards to this deck should I choose to pick them up, which I'm very hungry to get those because this is a very pretty deck. There's no lie, pretty decks I really like pretty decks. 3 Effect Veiler. This card, I don't have impermanences, but Effect Veiler works really nice with Construct in case your Trick Clown does get banished off Pot of Desires. Effect Veiler's non-once return, so you can use them multiple times, just that infinite impermanence helps against True King of all Calamities if they use it during your turn. Last hand traps are 2 Ash Blossoms. This is merely a space reason. If I had more space, I'd play 3, but just because if you open up too many Shaddoll monsters in your opening hands, you do run the risk of breaking and not being able to do anything. For the spell cards, 3 Magical Meltdown. Some people run 2, but it's been like several months since any legit toppings came with this deck. Now that locals are opening back up, some online tournaments like the LC6. I believe there were some Shaddoll Invoked in top 8. Don't quote me on that. This card just searches your stuff and makes all of your fusion cards unrespawnable to, I think, which is really good to help block out your opponent from responding to your stuff. Of course, the 1 Terraforming to search it out, and with it 3 Invocations. Some people run 2, but with Pot of Desires, I didn't want to run the risk of banishing one of these copies because it's such a good card. It recycles your Alistair the Invoker, and you can use those to fusion summon your Shaddoll monsters into your fusion monsters. And running more polymerization cards is really good for the deck. There's a combo you can do with the Alistair the Invoker of Madness. I don't happen to have that card. It's running a pretty high price tag, so I'm trying to make do without it. For the Shaddoll fusion spells, 3 Shaddoll Fusion. This card's so good going second, as well as going first. 3 Shaddoll Fusion. This card is your main form of disruption because you can summon your Construct during your opponent's turn, your Winda, as well as your App Clone, which are all really important cards for the deck. This also helps out specific cards like Infinite Impermanence as well as Forbidden Droplets, because if they chain that card to your Winda during their turn, you can just use Shaddoll Fusion to target your Winda plus a Shaddoll monster in your hand or field, and then summon your second copy of Winda, and they need to have another form of negate in order to stop that. For supporting cards, 3 Super Polymerization. Some people run 2. I choose to run 3 just because most boards these days ends with a Dragoon plus Verdi Anaconda on board, and those are just really prime targets for Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. and just requiring 2 dark monsters and also adding an additional negate, and it does blow up the field if it's destroyed. So I wanted to maximize the potential of drawing the super pot, even if I, for example, use Pot of Desires to banish the other 2 cards, still a form of disruption, spell form of disruption, not a monster form, which is really good. It's also cannot be responded to, which means it dodges a lot of prevalent boards your opponent can make. Desires is simply for a consistency boost. Because your deck relies on having cards in your hand, just having a +1 is much more valuable than having Allure of Darkness, even if the cost is banishing 10 cards from the top of your deck. The last 2 cards in my deck is 1 Shaddoll Incarnation +1 Foolish Burial. You usually get this card out of the deck before you even do anything, so I don't run 2 of this. I am missing Shaddoll Schism, which I do want to pick up. It is such a great card and it can definitely boost the power of this deck. But if you don't happen to have it, then I'd heavily advise picking it up as soon as possible. As for the fusions, I only run 4 invoked fusion monsters, 1 Makaba, 1 Caliga, 1 Purgatrio, and 1 Agoidus. These 2 are your main forms, or these 3 actually are your main forms of disruption. This will lock your opponent into using only 1 monster effect as well as yourself. Invoked Makaba can negate basically anything as long as you have a card to discard for it. Agoidus acts as a secondary form of negation. This could honestly be a second Makaba, but I really like the fact that this card can be used with Alistair the Invoker plus any fusion monster, which means you can banish fusion monsters from your graveyard as well to summon this. If this card is special summon, or if a monster is special summon during your opponent's turn, you can target 1 monster your opponent controls and destroy it. It's a once per turn effect, but the second effect is you can banish 1 fusion monster and have this card gain the attack until the end of your opponent's main phase, meaning this card is really good for OTKing your opponent. For Shaddoll fusion monsters, 2 construct, 2 window, 1 act clone. I really like these ratios. I'm having a lot of fun with these. Construct playing in multiples is such a good card because it outs a lot of your problematic monsters that you would otherwise not be able to remove from the field. Ab Clone's a really good consistency boost. I don't have any Dogmatika cards, but if you are playing against a Dogmatic matchup, you could just send this card to the graveyard during one of their effects to search for a Shaddoll fusion. Winded, like I said, it's really hard to out, undestroyable by card effects, and you can summon this multiple times per turn. Last fusion monster in the deck is Starting Venom. You could run a second Super Poly target, but because most of your deck monsters comprises of invoked plus Shaddoll monsters, you can basically summon any of these using your Super Poly as well. For Link monsters, 1 Almirage plus 1 Secure Guard. Now this is just a proxy. I have like 12 of these cards, but they're somewhere and I don't want to go looking around for them, so I'll probably just pick up an ultra rare one soon. But this is just for the invoked package, so you can make Makaba off of a 1 card Alistair. 1 Gravity Controller, because you can turn any of your fusion monsters into a card that can remove your opponent's problematic monsters. 1 Cross Sheep, because this is a really good card in bringing back your Shaddoll monsters. As well as a Borrelsword Dragon. There's a few other Link monsters I want to add, such as Appaloosa for your first turn boards, as well as, like I said, Alistair the Invoker of Madness, and quite possibly Verde Anaconda, just because you can search Super Poly directly from your deck with that card. I don't think I'd run Dragoon, even though it is such a powerful card, just because I'm running Pot of Desires in this build. So that rounds up this deck profile. It's a deck I'm having a lot of fun with as of recently. It's super fun to just free flow combo style with it, but it's also a really powerful deck to play online. It's definitely much more consistent and stronger than Water in today's meta, just because this deck can go second as well as go first, rather than just having to bank on going first. It can play around a few hand traps. Alistair the Invoker does bait hand traps very well, and then you can have your spell cards to just back it up, because if they negate Alistair, if you open Invocation in your hand, you're essentially back where you started, as well as having Magical Meltdown to search for your Invoker in the first place. It's probably a deck I'm going to be playing more so now than Water at the moment, just because Water has taken not a big hit, but its main matchups weren't really hurt that bad, and just because we're missing a few cards at the moment, and all the other decks like Dragon Link can just outperform the deck, it's much more plausible to try and play a different deck this format. Maybe until things change or I find something else that Water can do that just makes it so much more unique and better.